Well, first off, it's nice to be back. It is nice to be home again. It was very pleasant to be with my mom and my sister. Obviously, it was a sad time with my father passing, but one of the joyful things that came out of this is the fact that I was able to have my father for so long. I've unfortunately, throughout my priesthood here, performed many funerals where the father, or sometimes the mother, has died very young, and then their children aren't able to then enjoy the blessing that is their parents. So I was, through God's grace, I was able to have that, and that is a beautiful and a wonderful blessing, and it softens the blow of his passing. It doesn't eliminate it, but it certainly softens it. I wanted to say that in the light then of our gospel reading for today, which talks about now, whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in glory. As Orthodox, we are to some extent strangers in this land. And when I say this land, I mean America. Because many of our Orthodox ideals are in conflict with what is proposed to be American virtues. And some of those, and actually one of those, came to pass between my father and me. And maybe I've mentioned this before, but it certainly bears repeating in the words of who is ashamed. One of the things that is indelibly marked in American tradition is that if I say something in my will, and it's my will that this be done, then that becomes then the 10 Commandments, and nothing at all can change that. And this is very antithetical to the idea of who we are as Orthodox Christians. If your family, someone in your family, has something in their will, something they want done, and that is counter to what the church says, then you do not have to follow that, okay? But I have heard it many times, Father, what can I do? He, she said in their will that they want this. Most of the time it's cremation or something like that. And they say, but it's written in the will. That's what my father wanted. Well, I had the exact same situation with my father. So this is what he wanted. He said, this is my will. You are my son, and I want to be cremated. And I said, Dad, are you an Orthodox Christian? Yes, of course I am. Greek Orthodox. I said, good. I said, then you can't do that. He says, you're my son and you're going to do what I tell you. So the words here ring true. He who is ashamed of me, then I will be ashamed of him. So I had no choice but to say to him, look, number one, if you leave me as the executor of your will, then I will do what is right by the church, and you're going to be buried. No, you're my son. I said, no, I'm a priest now. So we had this very difficult discussion here. So I said, you can change the will, and you can take me off, and then I will have absolutely no part in your funeral service whatsoever. I said, is that what you want? And he says, no, I want you to be there. I said, well, then we're going to do it the way the church says. So we came to a compromise, and he was buried in a national cemetery, as I, my mom, and Presidenta will also follow and be buried in a national cemetery. And that seemed to kind of quell it. All right. So number one, just because they say it in their will or it's their will does not make it right. Many times this is not their will, but due to, as they get older or dementia sets in or something else, then sometimes those things can alter. But You have an obligation as an Orthodox Christian to follow what the church says. This brings me to my second point. The church, and especially during Lent, makes us look at ourselves in terms of ipakoi, to be obedient to what the church says. American ethos says, I am an independent person and I will do whatever I want. Nobody can tell me what to do. I am an American. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being an American. I love America. I serve the country, everything, Where's Dick? Don't get excited, Dick. Where's Dick? He's back there. But we all, me, you all took an oath at baptism that you would abide by the church's doctrine. The church's doctrine is there for us so that we can grow as Orthodox Christians. So being obedient does not make us any less of an individual, doesn't make us any less of a person, but we have to understand what is it that we're being obedient to. This is why then you're allowed to come and ask the priest and say, for fasting, the canons of the church say this I must do. And the priest is there to offer what the church always offers, which is economia, and says, okay, here is how I think you should fast. And then you are following the canons of the church. But it is not for you or me to say, here's what I'll do, and here's what I won't do. No, here is what the church says you will do. If you can't do it, then the church will offer you economia, and then off we go. And then the third thing that I want to point out is this idea that we are owners of our bodies. I guess this is the most controversial one. An American ethos says, it's yours and you do with it what you will. If you want to take drugs, you do it. If you want to drink to excess, you do it. It's your body. As long as you don't hurt anybody else, it's okay. This is antithetical. This is anathema to who we are as Orthodox Christians. Our bodies do not belong to us. This is the main reason why we can't have cremation. This is the main stance for abortion. This is the main stance for marriage, is that, as it's said here in today's gospel, marriage is about sacrifice. Having children is blessing from God. What we understand then is that, yes, we use our bodies obviously for ourselves, but we use our bodies always to glorify God. But through the economia of the church, if now you recover from alcoholism or from drug addiction or from whatever it is, the church brings you back. If women who have gone through and who have painfully suffered through abortions, the church now penitentially welcomes them back through economia. So there is akrivia, which is the canons of the church, which tells us that we must be obedient, that we must understand that our bodies don't belong, that we are allowed to say no to people who tell us to do things, family members who tell us to do things antithetical to the church. That's akrivia. Economia now is what the church offers us through grace and says, here now, please come back in, welcome you back in terms of how to use now what we've been given by God in a way that then glorifies him. So this is not meant to say that being American is a bad thing, but we have to understand what parts of American ethos are anathema to who we are as Orthodox Christians. And that brings me back to that saying, if you are ashamed of me, then I will then be ashamed of you before my Father. So at some point, you have to decide, who do you want to stand for? Do you want to stand now here, or do you want to stand then before God?